This is the CONORAD alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
Over 5 years, 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, and ODYSEE. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim. Today is August the 21st, and this is episode 357 of Workshop Radio. We're going to forego all the normal niceties, and I'm going to bring my guest right on because we don't want to waste his time. Give me just a moment. Hi, Bill. How are you?
Hey, what's the temperature in Alberta today?
Today, it's not bad, but yesterday morning, it was 37 degrees. And the elm trees are losing their leaves already.
Well, I lived in Maine for many years, so yeah, I know. At the end of August, it starts, and I love it. I hate 95 degrees, which we have out today.
Oh, I'm heading, we talked for a minute, but I'm heading that way. It was 40 Celsius last year, just before I landed in. So that's like what 100. Yeah, it was hot when I got to prepper camp last year. So have you had a chance? So my wife went to England between the last time we spoke. She got to mudlark on the Thames River. So, I know. So I wanted to ask you, have you ever done anything I know you're a big metal detector, and we're going to go in May to do some metal detecting in England. Have you ever gone and done anything like that?
Oh, God. Well, I've never mudlarked.
Okay.
Many a time when I'm walking, I've been to London about a dozen times, and you walk along the bank, and the tide's out, and you're looking, you're going, is that a piece of a 500-kilo bomb that the Germans dropped?
Right.
And you want to go down there, but, you can't. But I would love to go mudlarking.
Everything in England requires a permit, as you probably, and so she had to get that all okayed ahead of time. And it was one of her dreams. And I told her I was going to mention it to you because I knew you'd be interested.
Did you get anything?
She did. She found a couple of pieces of pottery. One was around 500 years old, and it still had the finger imprints of the person.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
That was pretty cool, I thought, And I got to pick your brain. I happen to see a pinball machine behind you as well. Can I ask you about that?
Yes. My Black Knight, a 1981 Black Knight. Love the machine.
So you're a pinball junkie?
What?
You're a pinball junkie?
Pinball junkie. That's my therapy when I'm writing a book and it just goes bad and it's 1 a.m. So I'll crank the machine up and bang it for a half hour.
I love it. So how did the writing process go this time? Was it as smooth?
Hard.
Harder? How come?
There's an old quote from Wellington when he was asked how he won the Battle of Waterloo, and he said, they came at us in the same old way, so we shot them down in the same old way. I didn't want to do yet another, so they came at us in the same old way.
Sure.
So it took me the longest time to finally latch onto the plot I wanted. It really wasn't until about November last year that I actually started to write. Boy, the deadline was staring me in the face. But I had to say, one of those rare authors who says, I have a great publisher. So he was very understanding and very helpful as well. Peppering me, not, ideas when I asked for them. And I finally got the book together. First draft was done in March.
Nice. So how is that process when because like for me as a creator, my only deadline is self-imposed. I don't have people saying, if you don't do it, just the audience will be upset. But how is that stress when because do they still give you, do they give you a bit of like a bit of pay up front, deposit on your work?
Oh, that's how they get you.
Yeah, right.
Okay, another movie line. Every time I try to get out, they pull me back in again from The Godfather.
Yes.
And they kept, it's been 5 years between books. I did another book called 48 Hours.
Yes.
But I really didn't want to do another one. And then he kept offering me more money and offering me more money. So finally I said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. So he sends me half of it up front. Now you're obligated. Now you got to do it. Because you start thinking, I've already paid taxes on this. Right. I can't give it back to him.
Right. How does it affect the creative? I know maybe this is too deep. I don't know. But does it affect the creative process knowing that you have to create as opposed to being able to do it on your own time?
Very much so. Okay. And one more analogy, whatever. When people at workshops ask me, well, what's it like? What really happens? I said, writing's like a zit. You know, high school, college, you wake up one morning, it's like, oh, God, no dance next week. And you just keep working on it and working on it. It gets bigger and uglier and redder. And then the magic moment happens and you hit the mirror. Yeah. That's writing. A zit hitting the mirror.
So when you hit, because that feels good. No matter what you say, that still feels good, right? Yeah. When you hit that spot, do you get in the flow at that point?
Yes.
Okay. And
then it just turns into anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 or 6,000 words a day to get the first draft down. And then after that, once you got it, then you can go back, you can edit, you can tweak. You can bring it up on a line that you want. So yeah, the process from beginning to end can go anywhere from 2 to 6 months between the zit starts coming together until I get a hold of my publisher and say, that's it, I'm done.
So do you have an itch to do any more, or are
you kidding me?
Yeah. I kind of knew the answer, but I had to ask. So
yeah. My public, again, I've worked for the same publisher for almost 25 years. And he's just an incredibly great guy to work with. He's not exploitive, very, very honest. But yeah, they call me up every 3 or 4 weeks. How's it going, Bill? And then somewhere in the middle, it's like, got any ideas for another book?
The beat around the bush for a little while, and then they just kind of slide it in there, the compliment sandwich.
I don't know. I'm going to at least take 6 months to a year. Teaching starts tomorrow for May.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that becomes my focus from now until May is teaching college.
What classes are you teaching this year?
This fall, I teach American history, 201, and the 30 Years' War, which is 1914 to 1945. World War I and World War II.
So, of course, I do my due diligence before we speak, and I like to prep a little bit. And so I'm going to go a little different direction for a minute because I wanted to ask you about that. I knew you're a history professor, but I also, in another interview I listened to, realized that you have a doctorate in technology, historical technology as well.
Yeah. When I went back I was 38 when I went back to grad school full time.
Wow.
So I was a teaching assistant for 4 years, and my majors were military history and the history of technology.
Were you, did you ever follow Marshall McLuhan at all?
Of course.
So I love McLuhan because he's a Canuck, was a Canuck, right? And yeah. I summarized kind of his thoughts, when I always said, when humanity learned to fire a gun, they forgot how to fire a bow and arrow. And it wasn't completely the case, but I'd love to talk a little bit about kind of the historical projection of technology if you want.
Well, look at Agincourt, 1415, 5,000 longbow archers is terrifying. They actually would have been able to definitely beat a Revolutionary War army because they had greater range. A musket was only a range of 50 to 75 yards. A long bow against somebody who's not in armor, 150 to 200 yards. But as the arquebuses and muskets came in between the 16th to the 18th century, we basically forgot how to use a bow effectively. In fact, Ben Franklin, during the Revolutionary War, proposed, why don't we form a regiment of longbowmen? Bill kicked the crap out of the English, but it never came to pass.
Isn't that neat? Why do you want to speculate on why it didn't come to pass?
It takes 3 to 5 years. Actually, the Welsh and Midlands of England longbowmen, they've started doing this when they were 4, 5, and 6 years old. The Mongols, horse-mounted archers, their kids are already doing it at the age of 4 and 5. All right. I've been to Mongolia a number of times, and you can see it still. To train to that level of proficiency with a powerful bow takes years. You can take the village idiot, all those poor guys in Wellington's army, throw a musket into their hand, spend a couple of weeks teaching them how to load and shoot, and you can put them on the line. So it's the learning curve is what killed it.
So is that traditionally, has that kind of been the trajectory of technology? It gets more complicated, but also simpler for the end user to use?
Absolutely, yes. The Romans, it took them at least 3 to 5 years to effectively train a legionnaire.
Fair.
From taking him off the streets of Rome to being effective in a cohort and a legion. That technology gets lost, but then others come in, like the armored knight became the dominant factor in the battlefield. But it took a lot of time to train. The whole thing of mass armies in the Western sense really starts with the musket, where you can train tens of thousands of men to do that effectively.
Just quote unquote cannon fodder at that point.
Exactly, yes.
Fair. Okay.
You did not want to be on a volley line during the Napoleonic War.
Did you mentioned Mongolia, and then I also caught somewhere that you did a seminar in Beijing as well? Yeah.
When I was in Mongolia, first 2 years, we were working on this fortified area for the Khitan, which were 8th, 9th, 10th century, and then the Uyghurs. And I go to Beijing. I was just going there just to look around, but when they heard about my experience, they arranged a guest lecture on Khitan fortifications, with the photos and how they were, set up and such. So it's a nice little credential.
I don't know how I missed it last time. So when you say Khitan, this is going to sound foolish, but is that the Settlers of Khitan game as well? That it's
yeah, because it's Khitan.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So can you what was special about what they did? Because I'm a little ignorant on that topic.
They were just the people that lived in Mongolia at that time. I'm going to go off camera for 30 seconds.
Sure,
absolutely. I might have something to show you.
Yeah, I would love that. You go ahead and do your thing. So, yeah, guys, if you are...
Okay, no, I found it already.
Oh, you're good. Okay.
Yeah, on one of the digs, I found this, which they gave me. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can. That's a little... Here, let me... I'll bring you in closer here for a minute. Wow. So what, it's obviously a man or some.
Yeah, it's a tribal seal.
Okay.
Here's the seal on the bottom.
Wow. So for like in wax or?
No, yeah. This is bronze.
Okay.
And they jokingly refer to it as the happy man because in his left hand, he's holding a feasting cup. I'm not going to show you his right hand.
Okay, fair. That's all right. That's cool. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that.
So that was a tribal seal from the Uyghur. So about 8th century.
So I want to go on to the EMP thing just a little bit. But when I was thinking this morning, whenever I go to New York City, there's always that, prophet or evangelist who's on the corner, yelling, and people walk by him and ignore him, right? And I thought, that kind of ties into what Bill does. How did you become that prophet that I don't want to say everybody ignores because they don't, but you're obviously concerned about EMPs and CMEs and rightfully so. But how did you become that kind of evangelical guy for it?
I never expected it. When I was in grad school in 1991, there was this humongous 1 in 1,000 year event, an ice storm that wiped out the entire grid from Indianapolis up almost to Chicago. So there were sections that were out power for 30 days.
30?
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
And people got squirrely. People got really, really, dozens of stories about just people really going kind of crazy. And it's stuck in the back of my mind because I had already studied and knew about EMP as what's called a asymmetrical first strike weapon. You put an EMP up over your opponent, you blind him, you wipe out his communication structure, and then and also his satellites, and you have an upper hand. So 12 years later, it started to surface up in my mind again as a possible novel. It finally, one of those moments, where the book exploded in me. And I wrote 1 second after. I figured I'd do about a small town, my hometown in North Carolina, as you know, and what happens for that first year. And I never expected it. But a week after the book came out, I'm out in Albuquerque at a conference, and my agent calls and said, "You better be sitting down." I was like, "What went wrong now?" And she said, "You're on the New York Times bestseller list."
Wow. So that was unexpected.
Oh, course. God, yes.
Oh, that's cool. That's
I never expected. And just to add just a little more to it, I really, to me, the guru for this whole thing, his name was Peter Pry, who passed away about 6 or 7 months ago. He was the true expert. And then a Congressman, Roscoe Bartlett, who I got to know. And these are the guys that whenever I was asked, I'd say, "I'm just a novelist." These are the experts. And they're gone now. Well, Peter Pry is just, he passed away. Roscoe, long retired. It's sort of like it happened to me. I never expected it, but I guess I'm becoming a bit of a spokesman for it now.
I had James Wesley Rawls on last
Oh,
week.
God, yes. Yeah.
And I'd heard you mention him as a bit of an influence, but he took the exact same stance as you, that he wasn't a groundbreaker. He was just, reiterating what people who came before him spoke about.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's true of all of us in a way, isn't it?
Sure. Absolutely it is.
We have our mentors and we move on and we wind up finally mentoring somebody else. And that's the way it goes. So, yeah, I'm kind of surprised.
Was it Mr. Pry or Dr. Pry?
Dr. Pry.
I don't think I got you to speak on him last time. You mentioned he was a bit of a mentor in a couple other areas. Yeah. What did he specialize in?
Peter Pry was in the Reagan administration.
Okay.
He did work on strategic defense initiatives, Star Wars, and already then they were talking about EMP, asymmetrical first strike weapon, and that became his main thing. And he died a bit of a broken heart, I think, because for 30 years he kept trying to get the word out, but congressional, it just wasn't happening. It still isn't happening, and that's scary. People, a lot more people are aware of it.
Sure.
15 years ago, people said you got a tinfoil hat. More and more now. If I meet somebody and go, "Oh, you're the writer," yeah, EMP is a serious issue. Why aren't we doing anything? I'm like, I don't know.
So, okay. I know politics are politics, but let's go there anyhow, because I know when Trump was in the office, he signed an executive order to start. So discuss what he was looking to do, because I'm sure you kind of know. Don't know? Okay.
Oh, no, I know well.
Okay, cool.
I was good friends with two of his chief speechwriters.
Okay.
And we had worked together years before. They would call me up, ask for advice on different things. And I even helped with several speeches. But Trump was on board. He finally was going, this is an issue we have to address. Puts together the executive order. The spring of 2021, DOD, DOE, FAA, all of them had to report back what has to be done. Well, what do you think happened when the current administration came in?
I'm going to guess on day one, they canceled it all.
They actually did cancel it on day one.
So
I don't know why. And, it gets to the point at times you better have an edit button because I might go into a Tourette meltdown. I don't know why. We're spending $1 trillion on green energy, windmills, all of this. We're not spending anything to speak of for infrastructure security, infrastructure upgrade, not just against EMP, but the whole system in general. We're not upgrading it the way we should be. The infrastructure is 40 to 50 years old. And I need a cigarette after that. So
you are, I told you before, when you were here before, you are free to, this is a free space. You do what you need to do.
Well, I every time I talk about it, 5-minute interviews, yeah. But when I'm talking more in depth with a person like you, I get angry. I get agitated. Why is this happening?
I guess I'm doing a good job, but I apologize,
No, you're doing a great job. I love these interviews. So and I will be seeing you next month.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm excited about that, actually. Okay, so, man, how do we... Okay, I understand Trump wanted to, harden and do that with EMPs. Now, we don't really have that option. Whatever, we're going to deal with it. So, I guess there's... Okay, for a long time, I've been really cognizant of the idea that infrastructure across North America is crumbling. And we tend to want to continue to build the new shiny thing, but like that tower in San Francisco, ignore the foundation that it's on, right? So what can we do? How do we get people in the mindset that we need to go back and fix this 40-year-old infrastructure before we do the next shiny green energy thing?
I find responsiveness on the local, community, state level. I just talked a couple of months ago with a bunch of key people on this for the state of South Carolina. They're on board.
Okay.
States are on board, but states can only do so much.
Sure.
On the federal level, I'm finding zero responsiveness. At least there was some during Trump. More people were becoming cognizant, but also verbal about it. At the moment, it sounds like it's just a vast wasteland. All I can hope for is next year, for a lot of reasons other than just this, we need a basically almost like a political revolution, but also an awareness. We are extremely vulnerable on a number of fronts, and we better wake up before it's too late. This smells it feels like 1938.
Sure. You know the old adage, you can smell the rain in the air?
Yeah.
Can you expand on that? I don't want to get you too upset. I know where you're going with that, but why does it feel like 1938?
Keel over in front of you.
What is it about the political climate that feels pre-Nazi-esque? Can I use that term? Or
absolutely. Remember Neville Chamberlain's speech? I bring you peace in my time.
Right.
That was in the fall of 1938. 1 year later, England was on, or 2 years later, England was on the ropes. That England ever survived 1940 is a miracle. In 1938, I found a book in a library a couple years back, and I almost wanted to tear it up. The book was a biography of Neville Chamberlain, and it was something like it's something about peace in our time.
Okay.
It's just a tome. Winston Churchill was one of the very few, almost the only one, who was the voice in the wilderness saying, we're heading to the catastrophe. Do you know BBC forbid him for a while to be on air because he was too controversial? We don't want to listen to him.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
Winston Churchill, he was a pariah.
Until he wasn't.
Until he wasn't. And then a year later, people are going, well, if you haven't seen the movie about Churchill, you must see it. That moment when he finally turns the government around and says, we will fight. It was a very near-run thing. The war cabinet At one point in May 1940, they were ready to go to armistice. They were opening negotiations through Mussolini. They were going to go to an armistice and bail out of the war. How different this world would be today if they had. Because in Hitler in 1941, his full strength against Russia, without help from England, it was a near-run thing.
I know you love to dip into alternative history, and you've written some books too.
Yeah.
So do you want to put on your glasses and maybe say what might have happened, or take them off, gaze into the mirror ball and say what would have happened if they'd have gone to armistice and had a discussion and came to an agreement?
It would have been a proto-fascist government in England.
Okay.
Hitler would have gone to war with Russia, but remember, a lot of his resources in 1941, there was the war in North Africa, there was still the war against England and everything else. If he had been able to throw 90% of his assets into Russia in 1941 and had done it earlier, 1 month earlier. Okay. But remember, he got screwed up at Crete and a couple of other places. So rather than launching the invasion in May, he launched it in late June. If he launched it in May, they would have been into Moscow. I think Stalin would have collapsed. That would have been the world power.
I can see that. Can you, since you used the F word, fascist, can you define that for me? Because that seems to be a very slippery word today. And I just finished reading Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged recently.
Oh my gosh.
Are you a fan?
Oh, of course.
Okay. I didn't realize how much my philosophy lined up with objectivism until I really read her stuff. But, you know, for a book that was written half a century ago or more, it seems pretty precedent to what we're dealing with today.
Okay. When I'm explaining this to my students, communism is a collectivization of the state ruled by a supreme leader, eventually what it is.
Sure.
And it's like communism teaches that there's a universal appeal to workers around the world against the bourgeoisie and the upper class. You have to smash them completely, which Stalin did very effectively. Hitler, if we look at communism this way, Hitler, look at it as I get confused. Hitler was, no, the German people are everything, be they poor, bourgeoisie, or the upper class. It's the German people against the rest of the world. Now, it's very similar to communism with increasing state control, but still, they would play with the industrialists, Krupp and others, whereas communism is us against, the workers of the world against the world. Hitler is the German people against the world. And that's a very simplistic.
No, that's fair though. How, and again, you mentioned 38 kind of mirroring today, and we kind of have this oligarch. I mean, at my basic core, I'm an anarcho-capitalist. I believe in individual, the free market between individuals. The problem is, I think, is that we have a very interconnected system of big business and government at this point. Does that mirror somewhat of Nazi Germany?
Absolutely, yes. This ruling of the elite. There's a lot of similarities there. Though I always try to point out that, be it communist or fascist, what was the actual name? The National Socialist People's Workers' Party. That were the Nazis. They're socialists as well. So I've always kind of objected a bit to saying, well, that's the right and then the left. They're all on the left.
Right.
And on the other side are the capitalists and libertarians and such. So it's not that the fascists are on the right and Antifa, come on, Antifa is a communist terrorist organization.
Right.
So don't confuse left and right here. We have to redefine what left and right is.
How do we do that?
Education. It's, hey, I'm going into a classroom tomorrow. You know what I do for the first day? I ask simple questions. When was the Declaration of Independence written? Who fought in the Civil War? What was it? And 90% of my students can't answer. Not because they're dumb. These are good kids. It's because the education system has totally failed them.
Right. So let's slide over a little. So we talked about hardening on EMPs. What about, so post-COVID, of course, we realized that supply chains were rather fragile. And then we had the Suez Canal, which reminded us, and the reason I reminded of that is they were, did you see that they were cutting back traffic going through the Panama Canal recently as well?
Why?
Just climate change. Anyway, 10%, they're reducing the amount of water. So 4 boats less a day. Instead of 36, it's 32 they can go through. So it's not that big of a deal. But how do we... can you share your analogy about the Germans and the Japanese building planes and tanks? Do you remember that?
Sure do. I gave it this morning at a different interview.
Okay, there you go.
We're in a situation now that is analogous to December 7, 1941, 8 o'clock that evening. The president meets with the chiefs of staff, and he meets with Marshall, and Marshall says, you know, Mr. President, there's a problem. All our airplanes are made in Germany. All our aircraft carriers are made in Japan. What are we going to do? That's where we're at now. 90% of our crucial electrical components are made in China. We farmed it out over the last 30 years.
So how do we solve that?
Well, who was it that said, never attribute to genius what can be explained by stupidity? I forget who said that. Is this a conspiracy to destroy America? I don't think so. It's stupidity.
Right.
It's stupidity. It's a corporation looking at the bottom line. And, well, we can make 2% more by doing it this way rather than manufacturing it here. Well, we're going to go for it. Our stockholders will love it. We need a serious wake up. And we got that. Thank God, we were fortunate. Now, Pearl Harbor was a tragedy, all right, a horrible tragedy. You know, I actually flew the attack route some years ago. Rented a plane. Now, the owner was in the back seat. I was up front. It was a Stearman. And we flew the attack route from the north end of Oahu into Pearl Harbor and back. And what freaked me was, in the movies, it's everybody runs around for an hour as the bombs are falling, all right? You know, and then I hate that movie, I hate it with a passion. Now, the current one, Midway, is better. It was shock and awe. That's what I was saying that to the pilot in the backside. This is shock and awe. From the moment I could see Pearl until I would attack it was 5 to 7 minutes. 10 minutes over the target, I'm gone. So America had its shock and awe moment of just total devastation in 1941. It didn't last for hours. It lasted for 10, 15 minutes. Maybe we need that today. We need a moment, because realize that from December 1941 until September 1945 was 44 months.
Right.
We won from a third-rate power to the global power in 44 months.
Huh. That's true.
You know, on the day Japan surrendered, Halsey ordered up 1,000 planes to fly over Tokyo. And when asked why, he said, because they will never blank with us again.
So as I was prepping, I was reminded, do you remember, obviously you remember, but Y2K? Remember how?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So that was I'm not pro-government, but that was an instance where government and business came together to solve a problem with a deadline, an infrastructure issue that if it didn't, you think we could do that if we had the proper motivation today?
Yes, we could.
How?
It almost takes a clear moment of desperation.
Okay.
to realize that things had to fundamentally change. Now in the days after 9/11, we had that, but then we turned it into a massive bureaucratic response.
Absolutely.
TSA is a nightmare. I was just thinking the other day, how many attacks has TSA saved us from over the last 20 years?
If they had, they would be shouting it from the rooftops to let us know.
I think the guy with the shoe bomb
The shoe
was about
bomb. Maybe
and spending tens and tens of billions of dollars and standing on lines for an hour like a bunch of sheep. All across the board, we have lost our resilience. We better get it back.
I know. I listened to an interview on Mike Rowe a little while ago, and he had Ronald Reagan's son on there. Yeah. And he talked about how Reagan had the ability to bring both sides together. He had a way to, tell people what he wanted, but also bring it together as a compromise.
Mm-hmm.
Is there someone out there, or is that possible today?
I think only in the face of a great crisis.
Okay.
Well, let's go back to the analogy of England, 1937, 38, 39. Remember, students in Cambridge and Oxford were signing pledges that they would never fight again in a war. There was a strong compromise with Hitler element in England in the late 30s. In fact, the upper class, the intellectuals, many of them were like, well, that's the wave of the future. It took the crap going into the fan for people to suddenly wake up. Either we're going to have to fight this beast to the death, or a famous story, when Churchill was told he was going to be evacuated because of the threat of invasion, he refused. And some wag said, well, what are you saying, Winston? Are you going to stand there and fight? What are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to take my Tommy gun. I'm going into the ruins of the House of Commons. And his exact quote was, I'm going to shoot the first Nazi son of a bitch that comes through the door. That was the type of anger England needed. The same way in 1945 when they crossed the Rhine. You know what Churchill did?
What's that?
Churchill was there. They were taking sniper fire. His security people were going crazy. He gets in a landing craft, goes across the Rhine, steps out, looks at his men, smiles, walks down, unzips, and he pees into the Rhine. And then they're looking at him. He says, I've been wanting to do this to Hitler's drinking water for 6 long years. So how many hundreds of guys stopped fighting to go down to the river to do what?
Right.
So they could tell their great-grandchildren, I once peed with Winnie into the Rhine. That was resilience. That was power in a good way. Because remember, we saved the world as well.
Absolutely. 100%. There's no, you can't dispute that. So who's our largest enemy, or who would, okay, actually, let me slide back, because Washington Post. Are you a big fan? I don't know if you are, but it doesn't matter anyway.
I watch it. I read it. Yeah.
So when we talked about, this was an article responding to Biden canceling Trump's EMP, anyway. So they said, fortunately, there's little cause for concern about an EMP attack in isolation, because a nuclear EMP would be just that, a nuclear attack. Such brazen aggression would prompt an overwhelming and most likely nuclear American response. Such deterrence makes it unlikely an EMP would happen in the first place. The prospect of nuclear retaliation will almost certainly deter rival governments. Nor is it likely that a terrorist group could conduct a large-scale EMP attack against the United States. Doing so would require both a powerful nuclear warhead and a sophisticated ballistic missile. That was their downplaying of EMP. Well, can you respond?
Let's start with ballistic missile. You do not need a sophisticated ballistic missile. You just need a ballistic missile. You don't need the guidance and reentry systems to lock the warhead, traverse however many thousands of miles, and then bring it into a pinpoint target within 100 meters of its target. Anywhere 200 miles above. If you did it on the East Coast, you got it above New York, you get it above Charleston, you're basically going to have the same thing. Just get it up there. Don't need a powerful warhead. 60 to 100 kiloton, 4 to 8 times the size of a Hiroshima bomb. Those things are a dime a dozen now. Third, I put my bets on North Korea, Iran, or a terrorist state. If you remember, at the end of book 1, the army, well, whatever, and my main character is talking with somebody who knew what happened, and he said, oh yeah, we figured it was North Korea and we turned it into glass.
Mm-hmm.
And his response was, does that change anything for us?
Because
America's
it doesn't.
dead.
Right.
They killed us anyhow.
So
You don't need, it definitely would not be China or Russia, because we would EMP them.
I would assume China has to do with the fact that, we're one of their biggest customers.
They don't want to kill their biggest customer, and China's in a more precarious economic situation than a lot of people realize.
100%.
One really bad harvest across a significant portion of China, they will be in very, very serious trouble.
And why not Russia? Because that's the enemy du jour right now, of course.
And a final act of desperation, Putin maybe, but I think his own people would kill him.
Okay.
Because they know what the result would be. If I was going to place a bet on where an EMP might happen, Pakistan and India, would be a very high bet. Maybe Ukraine, but the political blowback and military response would be deadly. I lean towards terrorist state or third world country. Let's say Kim Jong, whatever, finds out tomorrow he's terminal. Might he want to do a farewell gift to the world? Kill us?
Right.
And what do we do in response?
It really doesn't matter at that point, does it?
No, it doesn't. And if you ever looked at those photos of North Korea, South Korea at night, North Korea is not a third, it's a fourth world country as it is.
Doing them a favor in a sense. I mean, I hate to say that, but
but they throw great parades though.
Oh yeah, and they put on a really good show for outsiders who get their permit to go in for a short period of time. They have 5 stores with filled with fruit and vegetables. But when you said Pakistan and India, were you speaking of like an exchange between the two countries?
Yes,
because their electrical infrastructure is almost medieval, is it not?
We're becoming more like them. It's an infrastructure held together with spit, glue, prayers, but they've always been in a tense situation, and particularly if Pakistan something destabilized, India tried to take advantage of it. An EMP might be a logical answer for both of them to try and cripple the other guy.
Fair. When you mentioned the Pearl Harbor movie and how pissed off it made you, it made me think.
Oh God!
Are you the type of guy that when you see an EMP in a movie or a TV show that you kind of holler at it if they do it wrong?
Have you ever seen the movie 300? The one
Yes,
with the Spartans?
Absolutely. I probably shouldn't say it, but I love the movie.
Oh, I did, because
I
there's the scene where the Spartans go marching out of Sparta. And these guys are, we are the Spartans. And, they just got little cod pieces on and a cape.
Right.
I lost it. In the theater, I shout out, what the hell is this? Is this the San Francisco Brigade? You don't go to war wearing a cod piece, you idiots. And I got up and walked, and somebody as I'm walking out shouts, hey, Doc, is that you? Yeah, it's me. I hate what movies do. Not just to history in general, but to the issue of EMP. I've seen a couple of movies. The Day After shows an EMP being popped over St. Louis.
Yes.
It's a very frightening movie.
Scary.
Have you ever seen Threads?
I sure have. Absolutely. And that is even worse.
Terrifying. And remember, it starts with an EMP over the North Sea. Those are about the only 2 where I've seen it portrayed correctly.
So what's the worst one? If you give good, if you remember, what was one that really pissed you off, if you remember?
It was the one with John Travolta.
Broken Arrow.
Yeah. Or also, was it Ocean's 12 or Ocean's 13?
With the little, yeah.
Yeah, we'll set up a little EMP and we'll black everything out for 30 seconds.
That got under your skin?
Not on my skin. If I'd been in a public place, they would have had to arrest me.
So I didn't know you were a Twilight Zone fan, although I can probably see it. I am too. So what's your favorite episode?
The Shelter?
Yeah. Well, that's such a good one. How come?
Because, a civilized group of people, friends over for dinner, become damn near animals within 22 minutes when a nuclear alert goes out and they want to break into the shelter of the one family that has one. Another good one is the monsters are due on Maple Street, where the electricity gets turned on and off and people panic. And then just for absolutely anything, it's a wonderful life. It's a wonderful day where little Billy Mummy, you're a bad boy. I'm going to send you to the cornfield. That's terrifying.
I don't know how Rod Serling was able to put out. I mean, it was what, 30 episodes a year or something at that point?
25 or 30, a passerby about the end of the Civil War. I cry every single time. I always wind up crying at the end. He actually accepted my first short story.
Rod Serling?
Twilight Zone. He passed away, and some months later, I got a very nice call from his wife who said, we have to return the story. The magazine is shutting down. But I'll never forget, she said something to the effect of, my husband really would have liked working with you.
Oh.
And she encourages, she said, don't let them get you down. Keep pushing. You'll be successful. His daughter now has a Twilight Zone site on YouTube, and I always click in on it. He was very much my guru in a way. I devoured his stuff.
What was do you remember the short story?
It was about I can't remember, what was it? The photograph. It was about an old photograph that a person falls in love with. And the photographer who took it points out that he was in that photo. His mother was pregnant. So the whole thing turns on, when the last person in a photo dies, does the photo change?
I love that.
Might it be a portal? So, and this guy is really fascinated with this one young lady there. And at the end, firemen find in the wreckage, the old photographs, and one is him standing next to that young girl.
That's, my God, that could have been a Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah, I know. I was so proud of the fact that his wife contacted me and said, you're going to do okay. That was back in the 70s. Yeah.
The monsters, was it the
monster on Maple Street?
Have you ever seen the movie from the mid 90s, The Trigger Effect? If you haven't, because I know you're a movie guy, look it out at some point. It was inspired by that episode. And it's kind of a suburban, just on the fringes of the city, and the power goes out, radios aren't working, and nobody knows what happened, why it happened. Mm-hmm. And the entire hour and a half movie is just them kind of society unraveling without knowing why it's happening. And it was inspired by that episode. It's one of my favorite films, and it's one that you really don't get an answer in, but it shows the breakdown of individuals very quickly and how you go from normal civilization to dead people in a retirement home, very, very quickly.
Well, look at the two of us right now talking about this.
Right.
I mean, this is a guy who wrote 60 years ago.
Absolutely.
And he formed a lot of our thinking and the things that we're interested in and aware of. I mean, to have that power as a writer, I would say he is my favorite author.
Time Enough at Last. Do you know that episode? The gentleman that was a book addict? Yes. That's one of my favorites as well.
And an obsolete man.
Which one was that one?
Obsolete was Burgess Meredith as the librarian, but you are obsolete.
Yes. He has an interview that he did. It might have been with Mike Wallace. I can't remember, where he talked about the concept of pre-censorship. And he was so far ahead of his time. Just the fact that he was sponsored by companies and that he wouldn't even write something. That was his mindset, was that he wouldn't write something because he knew it would be censored anyway.
Well, I mentioned Passerby. That had a profound impact on me as a kid because it's about a road after the Civil War. And you finally come to realize everybody on the road is dead.
Right. But of course you don't.
Including the woman and the Confederate soldier who stops to help her. And it was just like, I remember that because I was already interested in the Civil War. And it really shaped my interest in the Civil War in a way, about more than the battles. It was what happens to all these individual soldiers and how did they live? How did they die? What did they believe in? And yeah.
Were there any, I think we touched a bit on this before, but what did you read growing up? You're a TV guy, but what were you into reading as far as your influences?
Boy's Life.
You wrote for that magazine, right?
But yeah, Boy's Life. I wrote for Boy's Life. In part, I was inspired because Boy's Life published Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke. And when I published my first short story, it was in Boy's Life. And I was thrilled. And the editor there had worked with Ray Bradbury. And Boy's Life, all the classic science fiction. I was very much a nerd, growing up. Mainly science fiction and history. That's what I read.
What's your favorite piece of fiction? If you had to pick one.
Did you believe 1984?
100% I would. It's one of my favorites as well. Why?
Because it was a picture of the future. That frightful line from O'Brien when he says, "You want to know what the future is, Winston? It's a boot smashed into the a face of a human forever." And in fact, Rod Serling used that line as well many times. Also, Alas, Babylon. I just reread Orthobites recently.
Yes.
Canticle for Leibowitz. These were the books I read as a kid.
Lucifer's Hammer?
Of course.
That's a dark one.
Well, my editor now is the guy who edited. This is one of the first editing jobs he had was Lucifer's Hammer.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Bob's been an editor for 50 years.
Wow. What about On the Beach?
Do you want me to start crying?
I know that. And I know this is further along, but were you, oh darn, my brain isn't working, but The Road, Cormac McCarthy. Did you ever?
I didn't like that as much.
Did you see the film?
Yeah, it just didn't grab me.
Fair. It's dark.
So, yeah, those were major influences. Then, of course, very much. Oh, no. Hang on.
It's okay. Don't worry. We are dog friendly here.
Hang on. Stop barking. Okay. There's somebody coming in, but we'll keep the interview going. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
We're good. You know what? Don't worry about the dogs. They're okay. Really.
Well, you're going to get barked on like crazy.
Okay.
So I'm holding Chloe until she gets out, and then I'll cut them loose on her. Okay?
Sure.
Yes, I know, Chloe. Next question.
Yeah. Do you have a few minutes to go through some from the audience here?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
I'll break at about 15 more minutes. Okay.
Sounds good. How long do you have? I don't want to keep you. So.
Well, I wish we had another hour, but my PT person is coming over to help me with my back.
That's okay. Well, why don't we go through these questions and see where we're at for time? And if we're there,
then we're going to be doing an interview next month anyhow.
Yes, and I cannot wait. And we'll.
Yeah, why don't you just come on over here for lunch, okay?
I would love that, Bill. Thank you.
Yeah, I would too.
Thank you very much. All right, I got. Oh, no,
You're going to be in Saluda, which is only an hour away. So
that's perfect. I started a bunch of questions here. I've been so enthralled with talking to you that I haven't really interacted with people here, but we'll bring them up one at a time. So,
okay.
Actually, hang on. We're going to skip this one here. So this is from a friend of mine, Lee. He's Cold War prepper in Texas. He just wanted to say that, Bill, because of your book, I now have an entire house solar system with backup battery solely for insulin storage.
Thank God. That's a question when people ask me now. There is insulin now that's temperature resistant, but still. When the book first came out, I would have mothers come up to me, say, my daughter has an aggressive type 1. What do I do? And I would just say, I couldn't answer them, you know? Right. I was in tears more than once as well. See, my grandfather had diabetes, so that's where I became exposed to it when I was a kid. Okay, I am going to cut the dog. Let loose the dogs of war.
You go ahead. So if you guys have any other questions while Bill's getting his canines wrangled up here, feel free to throw them out. We got about 15 minutes where we can knock out a few more questions, and then we will, this is, guys, oh my goodness. It's absolutely, I appreciate Bill beyond belief, and I know he's really busy. His book actually comes out tomorrow.
Oh God, I'm still in my underwear.
So what? My goodness. Don't worry about that one bit.
My pajamas, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, if you can shop at Walmart in your pajamas, you can do an interview in pajamas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? What about the end of green power? Things like, I was thinking about this with this question. We're going to an all-electric vehicle. We're going to be even more susceptible to EMPs with that. I don't think it's any worse, but
if you have an EV, make sure you have an old car stashed someplace else.
Good advice. What about, I heard you mention about EMP protection devices. Have you looked into that at all? Or how can someone harden individually?
I'm not going to speak on that because I'm not enough of an expert. I don't want to lead people the wrong way. I mean, I get approached by companies to endorse their products. I won't do it.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
Patrick says, and I haven't either, never forgotten how great my first read of 1 Second After was. Amazing.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I remember sitting, when the book came out, 2008 was it? Or was it?
9. Okay. 2009.
So somewhere between 2010 and 2012, I was reading it at the emergency room, waiting for my wife. And I was there reading. Okay? Yeah, she was good. It was, I don't even remember just something simple. It was good. Okay. But I remember reading the nursing home scene while sitting there. And I know, I'm sure you get it from everyone, but that stuck with me as much as my first watch of The Road. It's just so, there's very few scenes in movies that have stuck with me as much as that scene in your book.
Why did I write it? Because when I first started drafting 1 Second After, my father was in the last months of his life in a nursing home just up the road from me. We got hit by a bad hurricane. They called me up because, they knew me well because my dad was in there for over a year. They said they need help. So I drove up through the storm, came in. They were on emergency backup lights. They didn't have water. And I'm like, how come you don't have, I thought you had a cistern. What do we do if the secondary grid goes down? That scared me.
Sure.
I remember talking with the one manager afterwards. She said, if we lost power, we have bottled air. But after bottled air, you have a squeeze valve, And when you finally get too tired of pumping air into your father, it goes. And I could just picture that nursing home. I tried to describe it as close as possible as to the one that my father was actually in, and what it would be like just in 48 hours.
And you discussed in there as well about how most people, derelict of duty at that point, and rightfully so. I'm going to be honest. If I have a family at home, I'm going home to look after, and I wouldn't begrudge anyone for it, right? So it would happen fast, wouldn't it?
Well, first of all, transportation. Your typical, okay, the staff in my father's nursing home. I started asking him, where are you from? Well, I live down in Marion. I live down in Old Fort. So it's 5, 10, 20 miles. They're not going to come in. In fact, with the hurricane, they were woefully understaffed. That's why they called me up and said, could you please come in and help take care of your father and a couple of other people?
Wow.
So imagine in a real situation, there'll be hardly anyone there within a day or two. What happens to all the Alzheimer's patients? Because the ankle bracelet that many people use now is not going to work.
Right.
And Alzheimer patients, they'll just be wandering off after a day. Look what happened in New Orleans. It was quietly admitted that in more than one case, they were euthanizing people. And just give them a quick overdose to end it all. What happens to medication in a nursing home if the bad guys steal it? You've hit the sore point for me in writing these series. Our elderly, it would be a nightmare.
Absolutely.
It wouldn't last long.
What did they do in the past? How did we handle someone who was, I guess they didn't call it Alzheimer's, but that had kind of gone a little squirrely,
Well, that was usually the families. Well, remember, extended families were bigger then and tended to be more localized. Children lived near parents. Grandchildren lived near grandparents. It was the family's responsibility mainly. Either that, you didn't want to send Uncle Charlie to a snake pit, state asylum, which were just nightmares.
Fair.
It isn't well into the 20th century. And when I lived in Florida for a while, heartbroken, all these elderly people, where were their children and grandchildren?
Right.
They were in New York.
Right, out of state. Or
and I can remember these old people talking, well, I'm going to see my grandchildren in 2 weeks. Well, I haven't seen them since last Christmas. And I'm like, yes, I understand. But at the same time, we've abrogated responsibility over to the state and to medical systems for what used to be our responsibility as grandchildren. The way I helped take my parents through the last year of their life, still, they were in a nursing home. Now, I was there every day, but it used to be my dad would have been in my house with me taking care of him.
That's true. David Hosfeld said, I have shared my collection of Bill's books in an attempt to wake up some of my less prepared family members.
Well, let's hope they wake up, because you don't want your family members dropping over to your house a week after saying, hey, can I have a steak dinner? Because we haven't had food in 3 days. I know you had some steak stored away there.
I did I do a segment in the podcast called I Shit You Not. And it's, I knew it's basically I take common preparedness and, survivalist phrases, and I kind of dig into the history a little bit. Mm-hmm. And one recently was a quote, the humanity's no more than 9 meals away from anarchy. Have you heard that quote? You familiar with it? Yeah.
Yes.
How do you feel on that?
Because 9 meals, 3 days, let's stretch it to 6. What are you going to do on the 6th day? And particularly if you have children, how far, I give that analogy a lot. It's 5 days in, your daughter who's 6 years old hasn't had a drink in 2 days. She's dehydrating out, and you see somebody with a couple bottles of water. How hard are you going to negotiate with that person? Are you going to negotiate at all?
Typical niceties go out the window pretty quick.
Well, and that Twilight Zone episode, that was a screenplay of 22 minutes, and superbly well at the end of 22 minutes, the neighbors are armed with guns and battering rams trying to get into the fallout shelter.
22 minutes. Jules wants to know, I know the end, but are your books available in audio format?
Yes, all of them.
And Bronson Pinchot's doing this one?
Yes, he is. I love him.
He was so good. I know I asked you last time why they switched, but I don't think you knew, did you? That from the first book?
Happens. It just happens. Yeah,
just one of those
Bronson's things. With this one, I just got the audios last week, and I'm just like, boy, this guy, he makes me sound literary.
And it's cool because he was Belky on Perfect Strangers way back when, and he's so good. I maybe the only one, Will Patton. Do you know he does? He's an actor. He does Stephen King's audiobooks as well, and he's almost as good as Bronson. Just really, really good. This is Nat, the preparedness guy. When you were talking about the possible, bad doers in the scenario, would state-sponsored terrorism be?
Yes.
Yeah, because you kind of allude toward that, or maybe even outright say it in book 2 and 3, don't you?
Yes, and I will definitely in book 4.
Can we talk a bit about book 4 without spoiling anything?
We'll talk about it after Thursday.
Okay, that sounds good.
Give it away. Tune in next week.
Main man. Oh, where did it go? There, did I bring it up? Oh, I lost it. Sorry, there it is. A huge fan. Just wanted to say from Main Man 19.
Oh, well, thank you. I wonder where in Maine he's from.
If you're still in here, I'd love to know, because if you're a Maine,
I lived in Maine for 10 years.
I grew up in Nova Scotia, so I'm very familiar with
down east.
Yeah, down out and about, What I asked you this before on the last episode, but it is one of my favorites, and I know it's a sore spot. I know you do. Can you tell why?
Because I was very close to getting a green light, and then Jericho came out and it killed it.
Have you ever watched it though?
Yeah, I watched 3 or 4 episodes, and the day they found the freight train loaded with food, I threw my hands up. I mean, that's like Batman. You remember Batman's belt?
Yes.
No matter what situation he was in, quick Batman, pull out the EMP shield on your belt.
And it's true. He literally had something for every scenario.
He has something for everything.
The only place that I've seen that's been more of a bottomless pit than that is my wife's purse. But
we're not going to talk about that publicly.
She's not listening today. So no.
Okay, I'm not going to talk about my girlfriend. Okay.
Fair enough. Rapier wanted to know, what about the docudrama that National Geographic made, American Blackout? Have you ever seen that?
Is that the short one for about a half hour? Because if so, my book is featured in it.
I think this is one. I believe this was an ongoing series.
Oh, yeah. No.
Okay, that's all right. Just curious. And this one here, Jules says it's because of Bill's books that I put an EMP shield on my truck.
So he got it off of Batman's belt and he put it on his truck.
Absolutely.
No, good for him.
And Nat says
Babylon, that definitely one of my favorites.
First time
basically, I just rewrote A Last Babylon for the 21st century.
Absolutely. Yes. And yeah, that's great. I love that.
And I'm seeing this one here, Emergency Manager.
Yes.
Watching the news 2 days ago in California, and people were lined up out the door to get their emergency supplies. Did they ever think of doing it 5 days or 3 months or a year earlier? No, we wait until the last minute.
Well, right here, Jules says, that's the problem with people today. Nobody wants to take, I'm going to insert personal responsibility for anything.
Right.
So what? All right. Well, I know you got your PT person here. So where do people go? What is an actionable thing that somebody can do to maybe, I don't know. I listened to your interview in prep with Art Bell the other day, 2009.
Yeah.
And he seemed surprisingly uninterested in the topic. And I don't know if I'm just misreading him, because I've listened to a lot of Art.
Well, George Norrie this is a top priority issue with George Norrie on Coast to Coast.
Okay. I would love to anyway. Yeah, I would love to interview him.
I actually did. I was guest on Art's very last show.
Wow.
The one where the guy started shooting at the building.
And yeah,
he was on the air with me when that happened.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
He seemed a little maybe negative. Maybe that's not the right word, but what would you say that people could do today?
Initially negative. At the end, I think his last broadcast was 5 or 6 years ago. Definitely switching over.
Good.
The following. 1, every family or a person should have a month's worth of emergency supplies on hand. That's just not for EMP, it's for anything. 2, you should always have a God bag in your car. Get out of Dodge. All those people who were darn near dying in Atlanta 3 or 4 years ago in the big ice storm, and they all got, God bags, some food, nutrition bars, some water, some fractionable silver that you can maybe trade for something. Basic stuff. 3, community action. I find, particularly people who are Christians or Jewish, talk to your minister or your rabbi or your priest sometime. Wouldn't a church be an ideal place to say, let's make this a rally point if need be in a time of emergency? You can bring your children in here and we'll have diapers and food and everything else if you're running out of supplies. You start with small communities. Now, me, I know my neighbors, I know my doctor and all of that because of what I do. Just start trying to build a network of people that you know that you can trust in a time of emergency. Mm-hmm. My neighbor knows if worse came to worse, he could bring his granddaughter up here and I'll feed him, even though he definitely has a big supply on hand. So again, prepare yourself, prepare your community. If you want political action, next year what? But state legislators are very easy to get to. Unlike a congressman, if 50 people have said to their state legislature, I want something done, they're going to listen to it. And I'm hearing that a lot more from people, where state legislators are moving to get things done. Those are the things you need to do. And then pray that next year we finally do a turnaround before there's a major, major crisis.
Thank you, Bill. So how, do you want to take a minute and talk about the book? You can...
No.
No, I assume everybody. I knew that. I enjoyed our conversation.
Oh, in better bookstores everywhere, August 25th.
I'm pretty sure. I think the audio comes out tomorrow, doesn't it? Or am I crazy?
No, it all comes out on the 25th.
Okay, perfect. Well, everyone out there knows, and if you're listening to this episode, there's a reason you're listening to it, because you know who Bill is, and you're going to support him. So buy his book, absolutely.
And I will be seeing you sometime the end of next month.
I'm really looking. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Is your wife coming with you?
And just me this time. Maybe next year. We bought some land in Tennessee since I spoke with you last. So we're going to be. Do you know where Camden is?
No.
No. Okay. So it's about an.
I'm
okay.
supposed to know.
Yeah, that's great.
Secret.
You're right. We're about an hour and a half west of Nashville, and about a half hour south of the interstate.
Okay.
So
good.
Yeah, and I'm going to be in the States for a month, so I'm speaking at 3 events. So I appreciate the invitation. Thank you. I can't wait.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
And I'll bring a book for you to sign. I'll get to be a little fangirl for a minute if that's okay.
Okay. Well, I better get out of these pajama bottoms and get some slacks on because my PT person's a woman. So
perfect. Well, thank you, Bill. You have a wonderful day, and we will talk in a month.
God bless. And I got to ask one question. You're in Canada, but you're wearing an American shirt.
Yeah, I am. So I have a good friend, John Willis. He sells special operations equipment shirts and things. He sends me these all the time. And
good.
I have one with the Second Amendment on it. I have one with the Declaration of Independence, and a few with some choice, inappropriate words that are fun. So,
well, of course. Okay, I got to run here. So I will see you next month.
All the best, Bill. Take care, brother.
God bless. Bye now.
You too. Bye. Guys, I hope you... I'm speechless. I thought last year's was the best interview I've ever done. Back up. I thought last year's was the best interview I was ever part of. And Bill topped it today. So, guys, I really, really appreciate you coming in and making this a really good interview. Bill's just an awesome, awesome guy. And I love it. I love hearing people's stories and the journey that they take. What a great episode. So, guys, I appreciate you. If you didn't hear him say it, his book comes out on the 25th, and I cannot wait to hear it. So, guys, as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week. I saw that L2 survive.